Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Fight.
I don't know where they are coming from, but I like the fact that they've lost the battle on the mandate of the central bank. What does the central bank want to do, and what should be the narrative? The narrative is simple, that at the peak of the management of the economy by the NPP, the central bank lost 55 billion Ghana cedis in 1 year. Unfortunately, that 55 billion didn't deliver stability of the economy. It delivered inflation of 54%. It delivered an exchange rate depreciation of 54%, and it delivered interest rate in excess of 35%. So clearly, if somebody delivers a loss of 55 billion Ghana cedis, but the mandate to stabilize the economy is all over the place, and another one delivers a loss of 15.6 billion and gives you inflation of 3.2%, gives you an exchange rate of about 10 cedis to the dollar, as opposed to 17 cedis to the dollar, and gives you an interest rate of about 11%. Clearly, you cannot be comparing apples to mangoes. So why are they not discussing when they spent and lost 55 billion? What did they give to the people of Ghana? Hardship. So if somebody spends almost a third of that and gives you the kind of results that we have given to the people of Ghana, you cannot be justified. Well,
the argument has been that at the time that they spent that amount, they had managed to drive down inflation from 50% plus to about 23.
Who took it there?
Well, so they took it there, and then they dealt with the same. But then at the time, you in the minority would not take the same argument.
Yes. If at the time the people of Ghana got a loss of 15.6 and an inflation situation of 3.2%, they would have been very happy. Instead, they got a loss of 55% and inflation at 54%. If at the time the people of Ghana got a loss of 15.6 billion and an exchange rate of 10 cedis to the dollar, they would have been happy. Instead, the people of Ghana were given a loss of 55 billion and an exchange rate of 17 cedis to the dollar. If at the time the people of Ghana got a loss of 15.6 billion and delivered interest rate in a region of 11%, the people of Ghana would have been happy. Instead, they got a loss of 55 billion and an interest rate in excess of 35%. So quite clearly, what are you comparing? And this is just the first year of recovering the economy, where you needed to do a lot of heavy lifting to restore the economy. Having done the heavy lifting, and the economy having stabilized, it is quite clear that you are not moving towards the same trajectory, and therefore your cost is expected to come down in subsequent years. Let me give you some of the scenarios. At the time we inherited the economy, this was an economy that had been heated by the pumping of printed money, and I mean printed money by the central bank, to the tune of 80 billion Ghana cedis in 1 year in 2022. That same economy had also seen cumulatively Eurobond issuance to the government of Ghana in excess of 12 billion, almost $13 billion. These were not loans that were generated organically by productive sector of the Ghanaian economy. They were just money from somewhere that was dumped into the economy without corresponding productivity. So if you put them together, you are looking at an economy that had been overheated by high-powered money in excess of over 200 billion Ghana cedis. And you needed to recall that excess liquidity back to where they belong. Isolate them from the economy so that the economy will not be influenced by this external stimulus. So when you do that, obviously when you inherit an economy where interest rate was almost 27, 28%, what it definitely means is that you need to be able to first address real interest rate. And real interest rate, if the government was already borrowing at over 32% and inflation was even 24%, your real interest rate will be somewhere in around 30%. So if you are borrowing at 30% as a central bank, okay, try to find out how much would you pay for mopping up over 200 billion Ghana cedis of excess liquidity at 30%. And you will now understand.
So in hindsight, do we then admit that it is normal during that recovery process for the central bank to make such expenditures in attempt to help recover the macroeconomic indicators?
Of course, provided that you deliver that mandate appropriately. Delivering that mandate is not the same as giving us a loss of 55% and delivering a mandate of 54% inflation. That's not what we bargained for. If you deliver the mandate and you incur a loss of 55 billion Ghana cedis, we don't expect to see exchange rate depreciation of 54%. If you deliver that mandate and you incur a loss of 55 billion, we don't want to see interest rates hovering above 35%. So quite clearly, we expect some cost to be incurred, but it must be commensurate with the delivery of output. What was the output? The output was simply that Ghanaians suffered a lot of hardships. Now, let me tell you that these numbers I'm quoting at the time excluded a major expenditure item at the central bank that was hidden away in the government of Ghana. We had cleaned up the financial sector at a cost of 30 billion incurred by the central bank. Did you see it in the books of the central bank? It was hidden by the fiscal authorities in our budget, and even in our budget, they were not bold enough to tell the people of Ghana the fiscal impact. They were talking about below the line, above the line, aside the line, and those kind of English. It was simply to say that we are hiding 30 billion of expenditure at the central bank to collapse our banks and our financial institutions. Okay, so look at the amount of money we spent. What was the output?
I see. We'll not have that argument, over again, because again, like I said from the beginning, they would also make the argument that inflation was at this 50 plus percent. We halved it during that process. The minority at the time came at us for doing so and the likes. But I'll come back and look at some of the tools that you have mentioned. At a 94 billion CD negative equity, and macroeconomic indicators going down as a result of that, it's easy to argue that the current administrators of the central bank were only eager to bring down the macroeconomic indicators, macroeconomic indicator figures. Would that be justified?
No, it wouldn't. See,
then what has been the impact of the ordinary Ghanaian?
Negative equity is a cumulative figure. We did not start 2025 with a zero or a positive equity. We started with a negative of 61 billion negative equity. And so that is an addition. So it is not that we just came into the government and suddenly gave the people of Ghana 94 or 93 billion negative equity. No, it is accumulation. The people who took us from 10 million Ghana cedi equity to 61 billion negative equity are the ones holding press conferences and writing to the IMF. Why didn't they write to the IMF when they deteriorated and worsened the Bank of Ghana? And this crop of people have been able to achieve maximum stability. Today, people are not talking about the exchange rate being all over the place. Okay? Some people struggled for 8 years to hold the cedi and they couldn't. Okay? Some people for 8 years tried to achieve single-digit inflation, and they were struggling and were all over the place. Today, the complaint is that 3.2% inflation is too low. Okay? The same people who are struggling to give businessmen a breather in terms of interest rate ended up worsening the plight of the businessman. If government is borrowing at 35%, what it means that Koku Menu must pay a premium above 35% to be able to borrow to run his business. Tell me which business will give you a profit, a genuine business, legitimate business, that will give you a return that can pay off over 35% of interest and still give you a bottom line that you can survive on. And these were the people. So clearly, the results of the NDC and the results of the NPP
are completely different.
In fact, it tells us that we have been fooled by people who hyped themselves and delivered nothing. Today, the people of Ghana are very lucky to have that young man sitting in that seat, Dr. Siama. Okay, and I keep asking people, have you ever thought about the counterfactual experience if Dr. Siama was not there and it was Dr. Addison still sitting there? We would not have been discussing just a loss. We would have been discussing the ruining of our lives in terms of inflation that are unbearable, in terms of exchange rate that is unbearable, and in terms of interest rates that collapse businesses. Today, that's not what we are discussing.
I want us to look at issue around KPMG's language in the report. There appears to be an emphasis on matter when it says that, look, the central bank's tools used for the accounting may not be suitable for another purpose because it had a mixed use of its own central bank laws and then IFRS, which is the global standard. Why should we not be concerned about that mixed framework in the accounting process?
So the people of Ghana gave the Bank of Ghana a law to work with. And the law says that when you encounter revaluation losses and surpluses, it should be treated in the reserve account. So you cannot go after IFRS and put it in the profit and loss account. So that is not the making of the current managers of the central bank. We are simply being compliant with law passed and handed to the Bank of Ghana as its core mandate, unless you want to tell me that we should violate the law.
But assuming that we were applying the global standard, what would have been the actual level of loss? If
you properly understand what you say, in managing, in measuring the performance of a central bank, a key variable that you use is what we call policy solvency. And what does policy solvency measure? Policy solvency says that generate enough revenue to meet the cost of monetary operations or monetary cost. In our situation, we have a policy solvency factor of 5.5 billion. Whereas in 2024, the policy solvency factor was 700 million. Compare 700 million to 5.5 billion. Who has been efficient and effective in terms of the appropriate measurement of central bank performance? So in running normal businesses, you cannot use the model of a central bank because the proper measure of effectiveness and efficiency of a central bank is delivering macroeconomic stability at a policy solvency level that is consistent with efficiency. And we are saying that our efficiency factor is 5.5 billion Ghana cedis. Did you hear that?
I see.
And the efficiency factor we had and the NPP was 700 million.
I see. Is this in the positive or is in the negative? Because I'm trying to follow.
I'm talking about positive. Policy solvency is 5.5 billion positive, whereas it was 700 million positive.
Where did that figure come from? I'm trying to find it.
It is in the policy solvency
because the operating income here is.
I'm saying that there is another measure of central bank in the same report.
In the same report,
which talks about policy solvency.
Okay.
Because you see, when people are struggling to compete with you, they pick and choose variables that they think suit the argument. In central bank monetary policy measurement, what we apply is policy solvency, okay? And that is global. We don't use profit or loss in measuring the effectiveness and efficiency of monetary policy. You use policy solvency. In fact, one of the things we did was that when we came into government, we realized that the previous government, when they were measuring policy solvency, used group income. Now, group income would mean that incomes that have nothing to do with policy, monetary policy management were being used to offset policy costs. So if the bank hospital is making huge revenue and profit, has it got anything to do with monetary policy? If the Central Depository Registry makes profit, what is the use of that in monetary policy? It makes a lot of profit and revenue. What is that as relevant to monetary policy? So they were using all this group income to cloud the true effect of not being policy solvent. And we said, no, we want to see the picture for what it is. So those elements, remove them. Let us pursue aggressive revenue generation so that when we are executing monetary policy, we are covered in terms of actual expenditure, actual revenue that is relevant to the exercise. And yet we still delivered a 5.5 billion what do you call monetary policy solvency.
And on the subject of policy solvency, the minority caucus, or rather the opposition, has said consistently that the central bank was policy insolvent. And I want us to, besides what you have told us, I want us to look at what the figures tell us as well. Because we see your operating income, indeed, you have
policy solvency as reported.
Not just as reported, but what are the facts and figures behind that number?
I'm saying that the policy solvency is in the audited account. And the fact that you have not gone to read it doesn't mean that I should be assessing policy solvency from another angle. Please, next time, read policy solvency in the audited account.
But what is policy solvency?
It's in the audited account.
It's your ability to generate income for your operations.
So read,
cover your operations. Is that not the case?
Read what the auditors gave us for policy solvency.
I have heard what you said.
Otherwise, let's discuss something because I cannot be conjecturing policy solvency
what I'm saying,
from your perspective.
I am testing what the audited report says is the policy solvency for the central bank. And I'm saying that if indeed policy solvency is that you generate income, enough income to cover your operations.
To cover monetary costs. Monetary cost is not the same as entire operation. Do you understand that? The central bank has been established as an entity not only dealing with monetary policy, but also dealing with financial stability. So there are other variables that go into the financial statement that have nothing to do with.
So you are saying we cannot question that policy solvency recorded in this report because
it is in the report itself called policy solvency calculation. Look for it and let's discuss.
So what I'm saying, what I'm asking you is that you are telling us that because the report has said the policy solvency was 5 billion plus.
Yes.
We cannot question it based on what we see.
I haven't said that. I'm saying that if you want to...
So that's what I'm doing. I'm questioning it.
And in what you are reading, is it policy solvency calculation, or you are trying to conjecture your understanding of the financials to imply policy solvency? And I'm saying that I'm not ready to discuss that because it's so a matter of conjecture.
But what else would the policy solvency be based on if it's not on the same numbers you have given us?
So they've done that. The auditors have given us that. Why are you not interested in going to that? If you cannot find it, please, let's move on, because I'm not going to allow a conjecture to arrive at a figure that has been audited and approved by the auditors.
You know it is not conjecture, but we'll move on to some other issues. People are trying to understand how we were able to get to that point and how it impacts their lives. What would you say?
So let me give you some analysis. The laws that we have recalculated at or approved at 15.8 billion. There are other extenuating variables. For instance, when we inherited the central bank, exchange rate was hovering, the official exchange rate was around 14 point something cedis to the dollar. So if today the central bank is restating the same assets at 10 cedis to the dollar, what it means is that you are losing in value on the balance sheet in terms of normal accounting impairment of about 4 cedis to the dollar. So that already is huge, but it is not actual loss of value. It is an accounting recalculation based on what the numbers are showing. So the central bank itself became a victim of its own success. Do you understand? The central bank became a victim of its own success, whereas somebody got bloated numbers of assets because he ruined the life of Ghanaians and took the dollar to a high. He rather benefited from hurting Ghanaians. Now we said, no, Ghanaians are suffering. So let's work to bring that figure down. But when you bring that figure down, invariably, you lose the value on your balance sheet. So you become a victim of your own success. It doesn't mean that some money were doled out for those revaluation calculations. It doesn't mean that those impaired values represented actual dole out of money. So if you isolate all those elements, okay, you see a proper picture of 15.6 billion.
Right. And we see a lot of that reevaluation in the gold for reserves program, where while it made gains because it sold gold at record high prices within the year under review, at the same time because of the strength of the cedi, there were conversion differences as well. There are people who ask whether or not this presupposes that the tool we are using is not sustainable. What's your explanation for that?
I can forgive them. This is finance. This is not accounting. And this is not economics. This is finance. If you have an asset worth $4 billion, and that is gold or diamond, and you decide to sell that gold or diamond and collect $4 billion into your account, do you keep it in account and every day go and watch and laugh, or do you invest it? You invest that money. In any case, how does the central bank generate its revenue? By investing its portfolio of assets. And one of the portfolio of assets that are now available to invest to generate more revenue is the sale of that gold. The proceeds that have been generated from that gold will subsequently now be applied to investment to generate more revenue. And you are suggesting that that revenue is not enough to give the central bank an increase in revenue to cover policy solvency. Is that what you're saying? So for anybody thinking that to be able to do that every year, sell gold, as if when we sell and we collect the gold, we'll go and look for a silo and put it there and forget. Another year ends, let's sell gold. That's not how managing the finances of the central bank is done. Tell my colleagues that they should take their time to learn that the central bank behaves like any other body that has an asset. You must manage those assets, both to raise revenue, and you must manage the risk inherent in the portfolio. Even today, if you ask the IMF, and they wrote to the IMF itself frowns upon huge accumulation of gold in the reserves because the volatility of gold prices could erode all your reserves. And at the time, gold prices was estimated globally to have peaked. And when gold prices had peaked, what was going to happen? It was going to go down. Were we willing to suffer a wipeout of our reserves? That is stated in gold. Then we sold part of the gold because across the world, our neighbors were doing an average of about 20 to 21% of gold in their reserves. We were doing 42% of gold in our reserves. So we're exposed to increased volatility and risk. And we needed to balance the risk. And that means that you must sell the excess. So we sold the excess of about 18 tons to be able to normalize the risk and balance the risk. So it was a risk management tool. But of course, having done that, when the revenue comes, you expect your financial market to be active in the market, seeing how it can reinvest that money and gain more revenue. And so revenues are going to go up. And as a result, we don't need to rely on the sale of gold every year to manage the bank. And if this is their understanding of the proceeds from the sale of gold, I'm sorry, they need to go back to class.
But I want us to take a break, but when we issues that have been raised a lot from the central bank point of view is the impact the domestic debt exchange program has had on its financials. How is that the case?
So for 5 years, you know that every year our laws and the requirements of the Article 4 reviews of the IMF require that we do annual debt sustainability analysis. And that is supposed to guide us and give us an idea of where we are going, whether we are working in terrible territories or we are comfortable. And the Public Financial Management Act requires that in May, when the Minister for Finance presents what we call the Fiscal Strategy document to the Cabinet of Ghana, which is more or less a document that defines the policy priorities of the government. That document should be accompanied by two key important variables, and they are not put there for fun. One is the risk, the annual risk statement. What are the risks that are posed to the economy? The way we have run the economy, what are some of the risks that Cabinet should consider in taking decisions to implement the fiscal strategy document. In that same report, the law requires that the minister must also present an annual risk management, risk analysis report, debt sustainability report. For 3 years consecutively, Ghana was assessed to be at high risk of debt distress. It's not as if we were just caught by surprise. For 5 continuous years, all our debt sustainability analysis pointed to the fact that we were at high risk of debt distress. But these guys say, they continued on the same trajectory and deceiving the people of Ghana that everything was well, because our laws do not require those 3 documents to be published. So Ghanaians don't know. Only the people who sit in cabinet know. And they were aware that things are going terribly bad. But instead of pinching themselves and taking the appropriate steps to bring us back to track, they continued on the same trajectory. Until 2022, when it became clear that we didn't even have the forex, even if we decided to be printing money, and the central bank was printing money like Yahoo boys. Printing money as if we were Yahoo government. Until it got to a time, we have printed the dollars, the cedis. But the people you owe can only receive dollars externally. Can you pay cedis to America or Europe? That was where they were caught. At that point, when he looks here, cedis. He looks here, cedis. He looks here, the bill is in dollars. So he was forced to now write a letter to our creditors and say, we cannot pay. Not because we cannot print cedis, but we don't have the dollars to externalize the payments. Okay? Now, our cover at the central bank could only cover 0.8 months of import cover. Less than 1 month. So we had no choice. The central bank didn't have the dollars. Where we used to go and borrow $3 billion a year to pay for these things, the people had become alarmed and they have stopped giving us the money. We had printed so much already and given it to government. So when government came down to seek the help of the IMF itself doesn't lend into an unsustainable situation. And Ghana had been declared unsustainable. So for Ghana to even qualify for a program, we needed to come back, discuss with our creditors, and bring our debt situation to sustainable level to comply with a major internal approval process of the IMF. So we're not even qualified to be given an IMF program for the first time. So we now came back and said, okay, our creditors, this is a situation. We can't pay. So Ghanaians, you are going to suffer some of the haircut. Internationally, you are going to suffer some of the haircut. And part of the people who suffered the haircut were the people who were violating the laws of Ghana and printing money and lending them to the government. To the extent that the government of Ghana and the central bank, the government of Ghana gave the central bank a haircut of 32 billion Ghana cedis in 1 year. That was the beginning of the 55 billion loss that I referred to earlier. Out of the impairment calculation of 58 billion, 32 billion of that was a complete write-off. And I always refer them. Go and look at the Public Financial Management Act. Nobody has the right to extinguish, abandon, or refrain from collecting an obligation that is due to the state, except the people's representative, the Parliament of Ghana, who must be made aware, take a decision to grant that waiver. But these people sat in their offices and wrote off 32 billion Ghana cedis. So the haircut did not only affect the Ghanaian people who've invested, it also affected the Bank of Ghana. So that was the beginning of the trouble of the central bank. The question is, why did you ignore all the signs? Why did you ignore all the compliance provisions in our Public Financial Management Act that said that every year that you come in May and you look at the fiscal rate statement and you look at the annual debt sustainability report, you should begin to pause and take the appropriate steps to bring us back in line with those sustainability numbers. They didn't.
And 2 years on, the central bank is still reeling from that.
Because that money is gone. It's not coming back. When we say write-off, so the central bank cannot go to government to collect that money again.
So what I'm trying to connect now is how 2 years on, that could still be an explanation for...
No, you have asked me, is that the reasons we have given for the account? We haven't given
one of the things we've been told, that the DDEP played a role
in the cumulative negative net worth that was brought forward. So that 61 billion could have been less by 32 billion and would not have been discussing 94 billion now. Are you getting the point? So that is the extent to which the DDP is being discussed. It is not an what do you call a 2025 event, but it was carried as a negative net worth in the 61 billion. And we are saying, if there was no DDP, the 61 billion that we're dealing with would have been less by 32 billion, and therefore the net 64 billion you are discussing could have also been less by another set numbers.
I want to look at the cost of open market operations. We see from the financials that it doubled in 2025. And the minority has raised questions not only about that, but they've also talked about aggressive sterilization being used as a tool as well. Why is that aggressive sterization what
there's
we choose?
There's no word like that. You see?
Which one? The sterilization
aggressive, or that aggressive adjective. There's nothing like that. Let me tell you.
You are saying central banks don't aggressively sterilize?
When you were aggressively printing 80 billion into the economy, what were we expecting? They have forgotten that they saddled us with a problem. If we didn't have 80 billion printed from you without any productivity to support it, these were strangers with guns that arrived in the country. The sterilized funds were high-powered money, and high-powered monies operate as armed robbers with guns, trying to shoot anybody at sight. What do you do to them? You don't take the military after them. So when they were they should tell us why they were aggressively printing money and expect us to leave those monies that don't belong to the economy to be terrorizing our lives.
But more to the question, more to the question. Did the central bank or even the board not worry about?
Listen,
did you not worry about the impact the sterilization could have, or aggressive sterilization, as you know, it's put, it could have on the economy itself?
So if you go chasing armed robbers and you send army, you are worried about how many soldiers can arrest the armed robbers?
Well, there's also something like an overkill.
What is an overkill? An overkill.
When your response is not commensurate.
An overkill. An overkill is when you incur a loss of 55 billion and deliver inflation that is not that is around 54%. That is rather an overkill. But if you now incur a loss of 15.6 and your inflation is at 32, tell me the overkill. Tell me. Who was killing Ghanaians? Let me tell you. When you were printing cedis without dollars in the economy, and you had collapsed the bond market, so the people were holding the 80 billion Ghana cedis. You think they should put it under their pillows? They will have to invest that money. The only medium, a major important medium they could have invested that money was in the bond market. You have collapsed it. So where should they keep it? They go looking for dollars to buy. Do you understand? There's nothing like free lunch. So the people were buying the dollars, and there was high demand for dollars. Others began to bet on the dollar. Okay? So you have speculators who were betting on the dollar. People who were betting as precaution. All of that swam on the cedi. And the cedi ended up at 17 cedis. And you are saying what? We should have allowed your printed money to roam in the economy. So that as we speak, we should have been talking about an exchange rate in the region of 20 or 25%. You see, you remember Dr. Baumia said that... I'm coming. Let me make this point. You remember Baumia said that what do you call it? If it was NDC, the exchange rate would be 25 cedis to the dollar. Because all he knew was that monetary policy is about printing money. Okay? All he knew. And he thought that so if we were also to be printing the way they were printing, it would be 25. Today, we are looking for their armed robbers in the economy terrorizing Ghanaians. And they are saying, why do you chase after them? They are our armed robbers. Why do you want to chase our armed robbers? I want them to tell you.
But perhaps because you drove down inflation too quickly.
Yes.
You drove up.
Yes.
The value of the currency.
Yes.
Too quickly.
Yes.
Which is why you are having the yield discrepancies we are seeing.
Discrepancy means the numbers don't agree. There is different. So you are using terminologies.
Assuming that
that the numbers are high, I can understand. But discrepancies means that there is another number other than this number. Now, what I want to say is this. You see, nobody sat down at the central bank, pull a calculator, and say, the exchange rate is at 17 cedis. If I put this dollars inside, it will come to 10 cedis. If I put this one inside again, it will come to 8 cedis. Nobody did that. What we did was that, look, there was a challenge with making sure that you meet the demands for dollars in the economy, whilst at the same time complying with the IMF's requirement to accumulate reserves.
But there was a government that came into office with a promise that we will deal with the macroeconomic indicators of this country. And so it's easy for people to conclude.
If you listen to me,
it's easy for people to conclude.
Maybe it's better you listen to me before you come in. And I'm saying that the IMF program gave us an amount of reserve that we should accumulate a year. We need to do that and at the same time find dollars for the economy to function. Now, when the banks come to auction and they bring us the dollars that they need to give to their businessmen, and we'll provide them. In the past, they were struggling to get those dollars. Now they get it. The next time they come, they get the dollars. What will happen to those who were speculating and betting on the dollar? Let me throw my dollars in now that I can salvage something. Is that not it? Those who were buying on precaution. So maybe by the time my LC is due, they may not be dollars. So let me keep getting the dollars now, so that by the time I have to pay my LC, there's dollars. Those are precautionary demands. They now realize that I don't need to do that. When I need a dollar, they'll be available. So all those speculative and precautionary dollar buyers that has stuck them away from the economy suddenly threw them into the economy. So what it then means is that what we gave to Ghanaians, we now have more dollars in the economy generated by those speculators who were now running away from the very dollar that they were betting on to increase the dollar demand in the economy.
Right.
And therefore weakening the dollar and strengthening the cedis.
Right.
I don't see how we would have known that they were not just people who were printing money and throwing armed robbers into the economy, but they were the people who were also storing the dollar against the economy. And I ever said, when you have an economy where a government, where CDD tells you that corruption amounts to 96 billion, you should be worried. That 96 billion was what they were using to buy the dollars and stock.
Well,
and we forced them to bring the dollar to the economy.
So to the point I'm making about driving up the indicators either up or down too quickly, is that you have admitted that the central bank is a victim of its own success.
Yes.
Now, the point some are making is that perhaps if we did not do the aggressive sterilization,
I think you are very comfortable.
No, and balance, because it's a thing. It's a thing.
How do you define it?
It's a thing.
No, how do you
when you overuse sterilization as a tool.
When you overprint,
because the previous administration also did.
So far, you have not spoken about the aggressive printing of money. Because
we are talking about
no, because that is what it was. And so you must be aggressive in fighting the criminal. And I'm saying that you seem to be more comfortable with the approach to fight the criminal as opposed to how the criminal came in.
Perhaps because we do not want to get to the point where...
You need to get there.
We do not want to go back to that point. So we want to make sure the tools that we are applying are the best.
And you have done it at a loss of 15.6. The armed robber gave you a loss of 55 billion. after printing 80 billion and throwing into the economy. And he's worried that the person who went after the armed robbers to sanitize the economy, give stability, and improve the lives of Ghanaians was too aggressive in fighting the criminal. I mean, how do you say that? And you want me, and you keep emphasizing the solution rather than the problem. And I have a problem. You see, don't be listening too much into people who have one-sided view.
We want to make sure that the solution will not cause any more problems.
And I'm saying that we needed to do heavy lifting. We have done that.
You have done that.
We have stabilized the economy. Okay, we have given Ghanaians relief. The pain and anguish of Ghanaians is not anything. You see, when you now are living comfortably, it is easy to now think about, okay, this could have been done that way. You see, at the time, when the thing was going down, you were the guys who were very happy. Today,
we are questioning the solution.
You have forgotten about, you should have been asking, what would have been the counterfactual?
If you didn't do this.
If we didn't do that. What would the economy have been? You haven't asked those questions. And I'm surprised that our colleagues are not telling us the unlived experience. And the unlived experience is the experience Ghanaians encountered before we came to power. And Ghanaians were very clear. That was the reason Ghanaians showed them the exit door. Because you cannot come and manage the economy the way they did. And we are refocusing the agenda to make sure that Ghanaians get relief. By going forward, we are trying to make sure that we are taking the sentiments of Ghanaians. Not be advised and lectured by those who for 8 years had no clue how to manage the economy.
I want to touch back on the policy solvency.
Yeah.
Some have argued that this is dependent on government recapitalization of the central bank. There is an MOU in place from now
so
to 2032.
that is more about negative equity. You see, there is a difference between policy solvency and the bank as a going concern. So policy solvency, you are looking at whether the bank is able to generate enough policy revenue to cover its policy action costs. And we are saying that we are over policy solvent because we moved from 700 million to 5.5 billion Ghana cedis as a solvency factor in 1 year. I think that our colleagues should be clapping for Dr. Siama. You see, there is sometimes, you have to swallow your pride. Look at Dr. Siama in the face, my brother, how did you do this? For 8 years, we struggled to achieve this. In fact, we even brought revenue that had nothing to do with policy solvency to get 700 million. You have removed those revenues, Bank of Ghana revenue, Central Depository revenue, GIPS revenue, all those subsidiaries that have nothing to do with policy. You took them out, and you still were able to manage your revenue so successfully that you achieved a policy factor, a policy solvency factor of 5.5.
So the central bank could do without the.
So they must first clap for Dr. Siama and his team. But the central bank
could do without the government recapitalization.
That is solvency of the bank itself. It's different from policy solvency. And that's why I think our colleagues are beginning to hear certain terminologies they sat at the bank and never knew what it was all about and what it was supposed to measure. Otherwise, you cannot be measuring central. See, why is it that when the central bank made a negative equity of 61 billion, the auditors do not qualify the accounts? Why did the auditors say that the going concern of the bank is impaired and therefore they cannot satisfy that the bank will continue to serve its purpose? It's because as a government, who is a shareholder, this government had given them assurances that they would make sure they support the bank to continue to operate. This government, that was just a verbal assurance. This government, even though we inherited no program, despite the fact that the IMF continuously made it an issue that the government took a position on how it was going to recapitalize the central bank, they left government by escaping to tell the IMF how they were going to do it. First, Dr. Atufosin came to Parliament, amended the Bank of Ghana Act to give the central bank and the government a new mandate with clear timelines embedded in law to recapitalize the bank. So reading that act alone, with the commitment of the government, you will see that the bank actually continues as a going concern. Two, That commitment, I have not heard the Minister for Finance say anything to the contrary that he will not respect the law. But my colleagues who are complaining were in Parliament. Honorable Mohamed Amin is my ranking member. Together, we chaired the committee that passed the amendments. We came to the floor, and he debated it and approved it. I'm not sure he was aware of what he was doing. Just as he was not aware when the IMF was telling him to capitalize the bank. But that was a proactive step to assure the IMF and the world that we mean business. And we are not only going to give you verbal assurances, we are going to work by law. And I don't know who else has heard anything to the contrary. And I haven't heard anything to the contrary. And I do believe that what has been agreed and what was proposed by the finance minister that was approved by Parliament and which has become the new mandate for the Bank of Ghana and the Minister for Finance for the recapitalization of Ghana will be met.
So the bank, the central bank is policy solvent.
Yes.
But as a bank by itself, is it solvent?
I am telling you that solvency of a bank is a going concern question.
It's a going concern question, which
and
is why the recapitalization is required. Okay.
So you have to look at steps that are taken. If you are satisfied, then you can pronounce on the going concern.
Right. So here's where I'm going with that. When we look at some of the costs incurred by the central bank over the year, we see personnel costs rise by 44% from 2.28 billion to 3.29 billion.
Yes.
In the same year that the bank is a going concern requiring government recapitalization. What justification is there for that? Where from these personnel cost rise?
So the bank uses personnel. Have you heard of any financial sector collapse lately?
No.
Okay. ADB, which was for 7 years sitting on regulatory forbearance. When we say regulatory forbearance, it is when the regulator looks somewhere and doesn't apply the full extent of its own directive against an entity. So the central bank softened its own stance to allow NIB to survive. Today, NIB is one of the most capitalized banks. Okay? 2, ADB was struggling. Today, it is one of the most capitalized. Prudential Bank was in trouble. It is not anymore. Carl Bank was in trouble. It's not anymore. In fact, UMB was in trouble. But have you heard any bank collapse?
No.
So you think Dr. Addison does that alone? He works with a team.
So what, we employed more people, or we increased benefits for people in this context?
We employ technical people to support the work of the bank. Okay? At the end of the day, monetary policy is not a two-man job. Research is not a one-man job. Okay? Financial markets is not a one-man job. So the institutions today, fintech is taking over the space, and there must be adequate, what do you call it, control in that space. Don't forget that we just recently passed the Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill into an act. That already exposes a lot of fintech challenges for us. And we are trying to build the next generation of team leaders that would help move the bank forward. And so, yes, if Ghanaian sentiment is that this can be done cheaper, we are ready to listen. If they can tell us how that can be done cheaply, why not? We are a listening center.
Over $1 billion in personnel costs in the year under
review.
Ask you. And
let me ask you.
I'm just noting that.
Yeah, I agree, but I want to ask you a simple question. How much have you saved on fuel since that the so-called aggressive posture started?
And how many people?
How much have you saved?
How many people were employed by the central bank that is costing us over $1 billion in 2025?
I don't know.
Over $1 billion more.
I don't know.
In 2025.
So are you suggesting that that is your problem?
No, I'm suggesting that when the IMF has complained about public sector wages, the central bank itself is giving commercial banks very strict cost management regulations. By itself, in a time like this, it's still decided that its personnel costs will go up by 44%. That is worrying, is it not?
Yeah, it should be worrying. But I'm saying that at the end of the day, you need to look at what value did they deliver to you. We're in this country when some people employed 125 ministers. What value did they deliver? That should be the assessment. What is the value that they deliver to you? The value they have delivered to you is that your prices are not galloping like Usain Bolt. And today, you are comfortable to say that 3.2, we should even allow it to go up to 5%. You see how Ghanaians, when you are comfortable, it's easy. You know, when you're out of the woods, that's why I like the account people. They have their own way of putting these things. If you did
Let's talk about legal claims.
So I'm coming. So I'm saying all this is about cost, right? It's not about breaking down into the cost, but it's about cost. And I'm suggesting that one of the ways you assess the performance of an organization is to compare revenue to performance variables. And which performance variables are you comparing? Have you struck the percentage difference between an inflation of 24% to 3.2%? What percentage improvement is that? What percentage improvement?
I can't do the math.
That is over 300% percentage improvement. Okay? And you incur a cost of 44% to get that. Have you put together the improvement from 17 cities to 10 cities? What percentage?
It's 1126 today.
Well, we are discussing end year 2025. I think the report is about 2025.
It is indeed.
Or you are discussing medium term.
No, it is indeed.
So let me talk about 2025. You can be discussing medium term. But strike the difference and tell me what percentage improvement is that? If you have an interest rate that was hovering, even government itself was borrowing at about 30, how much was that? Government was borrowing about 35, 36%. Okay? Today, government is borrowing less than 5, 6%. What percentage improvement is that? That is how you compare performance against costs. You just don't pick absolute numbers and run with them. Those political commentators can do that because it suits them.
Right.
But a proper analysis cannot ignore the benefit that has been delivered as if costs have no value.
But the Ghanaian people will also want to know how legal claims in the bank has gone up by at least 300%, from 108 million the year before to 478 million in just 1 year. Who are those coming after the bank?
So I don't have the details.
Okay.
Some of these legal issues could be legacy issues that we inherited. But as a going concern, we are not interested in segregating between legal issues we inherited and legal issues that occurred in our period. And I'm saying that I don't have the details. But if you look at the details, it's obvious that some of these might have been inherited as legacy legal issues. And I do not know the basis of those numbers.
Very well. In that agreement with the government on recapitalization, how much is expected to be paid over that period, 2026 to 2032?
I don't have the numbers.
Oh, I see. Do we know when it would actually take effect?
So nothing like that has come to me at the board, and I don't want to conjecture. You know, sitting on the board, things you say mean a lot, and I have to be very careful. I don't know that for a fact, but of course, the owners of the bank is the government of Ghana. You may ask government of Ghana what their plans are.
Oh, but you're a non-executive director as well.
But if it has not been proposed to me at the board, I cannot say for conjecture that this is the amount of money they are going to pay us. I hope you understand me.
I can understand what you mean.
For now, nothing has been tabled before me, and I speak about what I know, not what I can.
We know that the former finance minister, former deputy finance minister, Dr. Amin Adam, who you referred to earlier, has said, look, he had written a letter, open letter of sort to the IMF. What do you think about that?
So you see, the physical implication of the 61 billion that he left, he did not discuss that. He didn't know at the time that the 61 billion would derail the fiscal side of government. The 30 billion he spent to collapse Ghanaian banks, added to 61, you have 91 billion fiscal costs on the state. He conveniently forgot about that. So I have said that, of course, Honorable Mohamed Amin belongs to a political party. He must remain relevant in his political party. And if is about sidestepping the technical knowledge he has to do political propaganda. I cannot begrudge him. But the numbers don't favor him at all. The numbers don't favor him. The numbers don't favor my colleagues on the other side because he left a fiscal burden of 91 billion and he never wrote to the IMF.
He wants the IMF to demand of the current administration a detailed plan, including the recapitalization efforts.
Can you tell me the 91 billion he left? What was the detailed plan? Please ask him, Honorable Mamami. He should give me the detailed plan for the 30 billion that collapsed the banks, plus the 61 billion loss that he left. Cumulatively, 91 billion. What was his plan? If it is easy like that, he should show me his plan. A detailed plan. In fact, he should just hazard a plan, and I'll take it. Not even a detailed plan. Anytime he wakes up, whatever plan comes to, he says, you come and tell me. You see hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. And Ghanaians know them. Ghanaians have gone past those rhetorics. I'm asking him and his colleagues tomorrow hold a press conference to congratulate Dr. Siama for cleaning their mess, for setting the economy on a sound pattern. At the time we came, monetary policy credibility was gone to the wind. Today, there's monetary policy credibility. Inflation is anchored, and inflation expectations are fully anchored. These are like dreams to some people. And if these people had done this,
we see the CD climbing up again. Like I told you in the beginning, it's about 11.26 on this day. For a lot of watchers and the Ghanaian people, for 2026, what will change or is changing already about how the central bank handles the monetary aspect of the economy?
Okay, so I just want to ask you a question. What is the exchange rate that you would like? What exchange rate?
What is the exchange? Why does that matter?
No, I don't want you to come back and accuse us of aggressively fighting the exchange rate.
I mean, if it was a one-to-one, it would be great, wouldn't it?
Exchange rate movement is normal. We are talking about stability. Stability means the exchange rate would move upwards and down within a range, acceptable range. That is not what we had. What we had was a Usain Bolt exchange rate. Okay? So the fact that occasionally there can be adjustments, exchange rate can go up and down, but within a reasonable range is good for the country. But what is not good for the country is that Usain Bolt running.
No, but I agree with you.
Yeah,
but I agree with you, but then what do we call it when?
I'm not PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal le Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.